Night falls over the Gulf of Aden like a sheet of cold steel. The sea is not calm. Wind lashes across the hull, and a massive container ship named Taipan cuts through the dark along a shipping lane every sailor knows. One moment of hesitation, and you lose everything. There is no time to fully understand what is happening. Off the side, strange wakes appear. Dark shapes skim low over the water. The high whine of small engines grows louder, closing in fast. On deck, pirates have already boarded, but Taipan does not collapse the way they expect. Deep inside the ship, 13 crew members retreat to the only place that can keep them alive. A safe room with a steel door locked tight. They do not fight back. They do not shout. They do not gamble their lives. They do the hardest thing. Silence, discipline, enduring the dark. The engines are shut down. Control is cut. The ship drifts slowly on the swell like a dead weight with its heart removed. On deck, strangers search for hostages. Below, the steel, the hunted, cannot make a sound. They cannot open the door. They cannot make a single mistake. Then, a point of light appears on the horizon. It is not dawn. It is the lights of a warship moving in, a Dutch frigate named Tromp. In the dark, the distance between rescue and tragedy can be one decision. Taipan is dead in the water. The pirates are on board. The crew is sealed behind steel. And the Navy is about to choose how to step onto that deck and still keep every life intact. If you want the full story of how the ship Taipan was taken back, a real case that stays tense from the first minute to the last, subscribe and turn on notifications. Because from here on, every plan tightens in the dark. The Gulf of Aden is not an ordinary stretch of sea. It is a choke point of global trade. Cargo ships moving from Europe to Asia, from the Mediterranean into the Indian Ocean, almost all pass through this corridor. And because everyone has to pass through, this region became a prime hunting ground for Somali pirates at the peak of that era. The ocean is wide, the night is thick, visibility is broken by waves and rain. One gap in watchkeeping is enough for small skiffs to close the distance. They do not need big ships. They need speed, audacity, and a target that reacts too slowly. At that time, international naval forces patrolled continuously. But there is a cold truth. No one can guard every single ship. The route is too long, the traffic is too dense. Pirates only need to win once. The Navy has to be right every time. That is why survival at sea is not only about weapons. It is about procedure. It is about discipline. It is about a crew knowing exactly what to do when the worst moment arrives. Taipan did exactly that. When the skiffs closed in and pirates reached the deck, the crew did not try to fight them head on. They retreated into the safe room. They locked the steel door, they cut control, they shut down the engines. This is the move pirates hate most, and it is also the most dangerous. Because when a ship cannot move, pirates struggle to take it toward shore, struggle to escape, struggle to turn it into leverage. But there is a darker side. When pirates cannot find people, they become impatient. And when a predator becomes impatient, the situation can slide out of control. The safe room is like a steel cocoon deep inside the vessel. It is not a place to fight. It is a place to endure. Inside, 13 people hear footsteps above their heads. They hear metal scraping on deck. They hear banging somewhere in the hull. They cannot panic. They cannot make noise. They cannot reveal their position, because one slip can turn the steel door into the wrong kind of trap. And then there is no way back. Meanwhile, out on the water, the Dutch warship Tromp moves into the area. On the surface, Taipan is a huge steel body left drifting in the swell. It is not easy to know what is happening on board. It is not easy to know where the pirates are. It is not easy to know whether the crew is safe. And this is the hardest problem. Move too fast and you corner the pirates, raising the risk of sudden violence. Wait too long and the pirates may find the safe room, or try to move the ship, or do something reckless to force the crew to reveal themselves. That is why, before any boarding action is approved, something more frightening than gunfire comes first. Information. Tromp has to understand what is happening inside the ship. It has to measure the risk. It has to calculate an approach. It has to choose timing and direction so the men on deck do not even realize the net is closing. That night, Taipan keeps drifting. The pirates keep searching, and Tromp keeps coming, meter by meter. It looks like nothing is moving, but the clock has already started. A few decisions more, and the story will shift from silence to impact. On Taipan's deck, this is no longer a quick raid. It has become a hunt. The intruders move along the metal walkways, opening compartments, sweeping flashlights into dark corners, listening for the smallest sound. They have boarded the ship. They stand on a steel giant worth millions. But they are missing the one thing that turns control into money. They have no hostages, no leverage, and no one to steer the ship the way they want. The longer they find nothing, the more the rhythm changes. Faster footsteps, harder banging, voices that sound tighter and angrier. At sea, a predator does not have much patience. Every minute that passes increases the chance that a military force appears over the horizon. The men on deck know this. They have done this before. They know what a lonely ship looks like, and they know what it feels like when a warship enters the picture. Deep inside the hull, the 13 crew members stay in the safe room. They cannot win with force. They can only win with silence, sweat in stale air, heartbeats, metal vibrating with each wave. The steel door is not just a door. It is the line between life and death. If it holds, they still have a chance. If it fails, procedure collapses and the whole ship becomes a prison. So they do what outsiders rarely understand. They let the rage above grow, but they never answer it. Not one unnecessary sound, not one unnecessary move. Right here, the crisis becomes a three-layer game. Layer 1 is the intruders on deck trying to turn Taipan into a profitable hostage situation. Layer 2 is the crew making themselves invisible. Layer 3 is Trump offshore, approaching a target where the most important people are hidden behind steel in the dark. On Trump, sailors in uniform look at Taipan the way you look at a mountain burning from the inside. Everyone understands that if this is handled wrong, silence turns into chaos. The first problem is awareness. How many pirates are on board, where they are, whether the crew is safe, whether the pirates are trying to breach the safe room, whether the ship can be moved. You cannot rush in just because time is passing. At sea, rushing often means paying with mistakes. Trump closes in without grand gestures. A warship does not need to shout to prove strength. It needs position, visibility, and a plan cold enough to survive the dark. Every visible movement on deck must be recorded. Shadows shifting, groups forming, rails where a ladder could be used, doors leading into the hull. And most important, any sign that the crew is still following procedure inside. In piracy cases, one thing often flips the balance. When the attackers realize they are being watched, when they sense the lights, the silhouette of a warship, or the invisible pressure of an organized force, their psychology changes. Some panic, some become reckless, some try to create a new advantage immediately. And for pirates, that advantage usually has one name: hostages. That is why Trump's arrival is also the most dangerous moment for the safe room. If the pirates believe the Navy is about to board, they will grow more desperate to find where the crew is hiding. They may search harder, they may try to force doors, they may create loud chaos to trigger a reaction. And at that moment, the people inside have to hold the one thing every muscle wants to break: calm. Inside that sealed space, each minute feels like an hour. They cannot see the sea. They cannot see Trump. They only know there are pirates above, and somewhere beyond them there is a chance. But that chance is real only if they do not reveal themselves. So they stay silent. They check each other with eye contact. They split small tasks so no one collapses mentally. They wait for a sign, even a faint sign, that the outside world is getting close. On Trump, the tension comes from a simple truth. No one wants this story to reach the point where shots decide the outcome. A cargo ship is not a battlefield. It carries fuel, machinery, enclosed spaces. One wrong move can cause a chain reaction. That is why, before any assault, commanders try something that may look soft but is actually hard. Pressure the enemy into giving up. Pressure at sea does not have to be shouting. It is position, presence, cutting escape routes, making the attackers understand that time is draining their options. Trump begins to do exactly that. Tighten the space, control distance, watch every movement, create a posture where if the pirates jump to a skiff, they are tracked. If they try to move the ship, They are blocked. If they try to breach the safe room, they pay for it. But on Taipan's deck, the intruders are not people who accept defeat easily. When pirates cannot find the crew, they usually face two choices: leave and run, or gamble to regain control. And that second choice is what makes this night truly dangerous, because gambling at sea often means pushing deeper into the hull, trying to locate the safe room, trying to force the steel barrier, trying anything to drag a hostage out of hiding. Trump understands time is not on anyone's side. Wait too long and the pirates might find a way in. Move too soon and the boarding team steps into a ship they do not fully understand. So the commanders on Trump have to do the hardest thing in any operation: decide with imperfect information, choose a plan safe enough for the crew and decisive enough to end the crisis. Signals become clearer. On deck, the pirates begin to gather and move with more purpose, like they are deciding their next move. A ship with engines shut down cannot deliver quick money. Every minute it stays dead in the water is a minute the pirates lose leverage. And when leverage slips away, fear appears. Fear of arrest, fear of being trapped, fear that the game is flipped. Inside the safe room, the crew holds on to a thin belief. If they endure a little longer, if they do not make mistakes, the Navy will have time to prepare. Strangers above will not turn them into hostages. The night, no matter how long it feels, will end. Outside, Trump moves into the next step. A take-back operation is not a dramatic rush. It is a chain of clean, fast, precise actions. Where to approach, where to board, which zones to control first, how to keep the safe room protected. Every step is built for the worst case, because on a wet deck in the dark, a small mistake can produce a big consequence. The night is still there. The waves are still rising. Taipan still drifts like a silent iron mass. But the air has changed. This is no longer pirates hunting an isolated ship. It is a confrontation between discipline and recklessness, between silence and panic, between people holding a steel door for their lives and people preparing to step onto the deck to end the hunt. And in the next part, the story reaches its impact point, not because anyone wants it, but because there is no other way. And when a boarding team decides to climb onto a ship in the dark, the question is no longer whether they will act. The question is how fast they can act to keep every remaining life safe. By now, everything at sea feels different. Taipan is no longer an isolated cargo ship. It is a crisis point, and every eye on Trump is locked on it. On Taipan's deck, the intruders are still moving, still searching, but the rhythm has changed. It is no longer the confidence of men who just succeeded. In the night wind, they can feel what every predator fears: the sensation of being hunted back. On Trump, the final decision is made. This cannot stretch any longer. The steel door deep inside the ship cannot be pressured for too long, and the situation cannot be allowed to drift into something no one can control. The moment of action is always the most frightening moment in any operation, because once you move, everything runs on momentum. And momentum on a wet deck in the dark can turn tragic in a heartbeat. The boarding team prepares like people entering a dark house where they do not know where the stranger is standing. There is no stage, no shouting, only equipment, discipline, and focus cold enough to cut through fear. They approach Taipan while wind and swell refuse to cooperate. The cargo ship rises like a steel wall. The hull is wet and slick, and sound carries far. But if they cannot get onto the deck, every other option becomes waiting inside risk. The moment the team reaches the ship, Taipan becomes a compressed battlefield, a battlefield where tragedy is not allowed. That is the real pressure. Their goal is not to win a gunfight. Their goal is to end the crisis while the crew stays alive. On deck, the intruders sense the presence of the force closing in. They are no longer free to search for hostages. They have to choose: resist and try to hold ground, or escape. But escape at sea is not simple. A small skiff needs time. Distance must open, and with a warship close by, every exit shrinks. The boarding team begins to take control of the deck zone by zone. They do not rush blindly. They split angles. They clear blind spots. They force the intruders away. From positions that give advantage, on a cargo ship, everything can become an obstacle. Cables, containers, rails, narrow passages. One choke point can trap you. So they move like a set of jaws closing. Too slow and you lose initiative. Too fast and you create mistakes. That night, every movement has to stay on the exact edge. Inside the safe room, the crew cannot see anything, but they can hear it. They hear footsteps that are different, tighter, more deliberate. They hear metal vibrations, short impacts, the ship ringing like a bell. But they still do not open the door. They still have to wait. Because in a take-back operation, the most dangerous moment can be the moment you think you are saved. On deck, the situation reaches its decisive point. The intruders are pushed back. Some try to resist, some try to run. But under tightening pressure and shrinking space, their choices disappear. They are no longer the attackers driving the situation. They are being chased on the very ship they thought they owned. And then the operation reaches its goal. Taipan is brought back under control. The attackers are restrained, and the steel door deep inside the ship is opened under safe procedure. 13 crew members step into the light, their eyes carrying the shape of a storm they just survived. No one paid with their life. No one became a hostage. That is what makes the Taipan case a marker, not because it was loud, but because it ended the right way. The night is still there, but the story has flipped. Taipan, once hunted, is now protected, and Trump leaves behind a message pirates understand. In this sea, there are nights when it feels like no one will arrive in time, but there are also nights when discipline and response speed pull you back from the edge. And that is what we close in the final part. When the sea quiets down, Taipan is still there, soaked in spray, wind still cutting along the rails, waves still striking as if nothing happened. But for the 13 crew members who just stepped out of the safe room, the world is no longer the same. They did not win with strength, they won with discipline. By doing what goes against human instinct, they did not open the door while chaos raged outside. They did not reveal themselves while being hunted. They did not turn themselves into hostages. The Taipan case became a clear illustration of the anti-piracy fight in the Gulf of Aden during that era. Pirates can reach a deck, they can dominate steel for a few minutes. But it is not easy to turn a ship into a prize when the crew knows procedure and has a safe room. And it is not easy to prolong the game when a Navy force is close, watching every move, ready to end the crisis decisively while still protecting human lives. There are 3 points to remember from this story. First, safe room is not cowardice, it is survival strategy. A small steel space can keep an entire ship from becoming a hostage platform. Second, a Navy presence is not only about force, it is about pressure, positioning, and closing the space until the attackers run out of choices. Third, the hardest decision is not the moment pirates board. The hardest decision is the moment everything outside sounds real, close, and threatening, and you still have to stay calm and do the right thing. Taipan was taken back in the night. Not fiction, but a real case. And because it is real, it reminds us that at sea, everything can change in minutes. Today is a routine voyage. Tomorrow can be a life or death crisis. If you were the captain in that situation, what would you choose? Would you try to run at all costs, or would you shut down, retreat into the safe room, and wait for help? Leave your answer in the comments, and if you want the next true stories of pirates facing naval forces, subscribe and turn on notifications now.